week. But there's definite flexibility, and Buster has laughed at himself. He said before COVID, there were any number of employee presentations on working from home 1 or 2 days a week, and he rejected all of them. And then once we all went through the experience of what could happen in COVID, um, he's been well pleased, and it's a part of the employment contracts and responsibilities. Now I can tell you
Excuse
one
me,
group.
Debbie, I hate to cut you off,
Oh, okay.
but good morning. One of the things we pride ourselves in with the Lunch Bunch programming is to start promptly at 11:30 or now 11:31, and we will end promptly at 12:30. And I just want to thank everybody for being here today. And I hope everybody is planning on staying warm, is warm at this point in time. And I feel that our upcoming legislative session with the General Assembly will be warm as it begins on the second Monday of January. So we are very fortunate to have with us today. Hopefully, you have heard Joe Fleming, our GAE Director of Government Relations, speak before, but if you haven't, you are in for a treat. And so, without further ado, Joe, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
And please regale us with gloom and doom, or hope would be the better option, but the truth is always good. So, Joe, you're on.
Well, I apologize also for causing the meeting to start late. That was my fault. Um, uh, so the session does open Monday, the Georgia General Assembly, the 159th session. Georgia runs on basically it's a 2 year session. Sometimes we refer to each year as a session, but it's actually a 2 year session. So the second of 2 years ended last year. So we began the first of the 2 year session on Monday at 10 a.m. And Debbie and I will talk probably, she'll chime in as to why it's important to note it's a 2 year session for certain pieces of legislation. Let me put a link in the chat before I forget to do so. Our day at the Capitol is scheduled for Thursday, February 20th. You can register now if you want, Thursday, February the 20th. If you've never been to our day at the Capitol, you absolutely need to be there. It's really taken off. Last 2 years, we've had really more people than we could accommodate, which is a great problem to have. And certainly the legislators recognize our presence there. We're usually all decked out the same. We hear from legislators. We have a chance to talk to State School Superintendent Richard Woods. We had a great program last year. And then we'll go across the street from the Sloppy Floyd building, which is literally diagonally across from the state capitol, and actually lobby legislators and talk to them about the issues that are on our agenda and the concerns that we've got as the session moves forward. So again, that's Thursday, February 20th. Usually we'll start in the morning with kind of a light breakfast, coffee, 7:30, 8. We haven't gotten the agenda done yet, but that's coming up soon. So with regard to this session coming up, of course, we had elections in Georgia in November. Every legislative seat is up every 2 years, whether it's the state Senate or the state House. At one point, I think a lot of us were very optimistic that we were going to make some changes that would benefit our pro-public education interests. Just to remind you how tight things are in the House, even though Republicans have a pretty strong majority there, we beat vouchers by 6-7 votes 2 years ago, and we lost a voucher vote this past year by 1 vote. So if we'd been able to pick up even 2 pro-public education Republicans or Democrats or a mix of the two, we would have been in much better shape. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. There'll be 22 new legislators when they're sworn in on Monday. Democrats picked up 1 seat in the House. At one point, they were optimistic they might pick up 6 seats in the House. There were no gains or changes in the partisan control of the Senate, which is run by Republicans there as well. I don't know if Lisa's going to be on, but I'll ask Karen and Patrick to help me out a little bit. I want to start with WEP GPO just because I think it's the most important piece of legislation, certainly at the federal level, that I've seen in my time at GAE and in maybe many, many years. If you're not familiar with the WEP GPO issue, the current law, as until President Biden signed it on Sunday, was that your Social Security benefits could be reduced if you were an educator who worked in a school system that did not participate in Social Security, but that you did participate in Social Security in a second job, a previous job, or a later job. And in some cases, that amount of Social Security reduction was significant. And then for the windfall government pension offset, it could, in some cases, does entirely eliminate spousal benefits. The bills that passed were overwhelmingly supported by Republicans and Democrats. But I was still worried because we had that same situation 2 years ago, but we couldn't get a vote under a friend, Nancy Pelosi. But this year they got the votes together. We won like with 375 votes in the House, overwhelming majority in the Senate too. And again, President Biden signed this law into effect on this past Sunday. So very exciting news. Karen, do you have anything you want to add on that? I think most people on this call are probably familiar with the issue, but if someone's not, speak up and we'll give you more details. Or Patrick.
Or Tony.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tony, of course.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is I went to the Social Security website, and according to Social Security, SSA.gov, if you are already receiving reduced Social Security benefits, you don't have to do anything. It will be taken care of. If you have not applied for Social Security benefits, you go through that process like you would ordinarily, and you should receive your full Social Security benefits once they have the infrastructure in place.
So, Tony, I have a question for you. I understand the bill is retroactive 1 year.
That is the word on the street.
Okay.
It did not say that on the Social Security website, but the word on the street is that it is retroactive for 1 year.
I'm wondering if that'll be a lump sum or paid out monthly, or.
I know when I got my benefits, I had delayed in filing because I thought I had to wait 4 more months, and I received a lump sum for those months that I had not been paid. So it will probably, because it's easier for them, be a lump sum. Debbie.
Two things, Tony, I wanted to reiterate and support what you just said. The National Council on Teacher Retirement, who has a full-time lobbyist in Washington, D.C., has verified that it will be retroactive for a year, that it will be, that particular one will be a lump sum statement as far, that we will get, and I do include myself in that. As to the timing of it, everything was put on hold until President Biden signed it on Sunday. So now going forward, we may be able to get, some more details. The other thing that I wanted to mention, folks, is that TRS is fielding hundreds of phone calls about this issue. Your teacher retirement system has absolutely nothing to do logistically with this particular repeal. We are trying to answer members' questions as best as we can, but we don't have, as an organization, any more information than you do at this time. Dr. Evans has put his feelers out to those people that we do work with Social Security, as we do our own presentations and everything about retirement. So as soon as we get any additional information, we will be sharing it. But I just wanted to reiterate that TRS does not control this particular payment. We don't have anything to do with Social Security, but we'll do whatever we can to help provide information to our membership as it comes up.
I'd
That's
like
great.
to share also just the fact, please, as a GAE member, be aware that you are part of a national organization, and the other state organization, and I'll say it because Lisa's not on the call and she won't find me, Page doesn't have a national component. So they sent out an email to their members that they, as a non-member driven organization, were encouraging the Congress people to vote to repeal GPO-WEP, but they weren't in DC lobbying. They weren't going through and mobilizing people from all across the country who this egregious piece of federal legislation that was in place affected. That was GAE and the other state affiliates. And again, I will sing Tony Smith's praises on this. She was instrumental in going through and having a moment with other NEA retired members, and made GPO-WEP and its repeal a forefront issue on the NEA legislative agenda. And then GAE retired created a motion at our business meeting to take on the repeal of GPO-WEP. We put it in front of the GAE board of directors. That obviously passed. And then it went to the NEA representative assembly as a new business item, and that passed. And so you should be so proud of being part of a member-driven organization that made a difference on the national level. And, you know, what the other organization did is beyond me. So we should pat ourselves on the back. We should have smiles on our faces. And that ends my pontificating for the moment.
I think Lisa's going to join us in just a second. And she may have some additional words on that. She's part of a coalition of states that are especially hit hard by the WEP GPO provisions as they existed until President Biden signed the bill. But I know this has been at least a 40-year effort to try to repeal this law. And, you know, there are a lot of important pieces of legislation obviously dealt with by our Congress. But for us and for those members who are impacted by this, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. I don't know if this is Lisa that just jumped on. iPhone 5. Not sure. Well, if she gets on, we'll give her a few minutes to see if she's got any additional information. But anyway, congratulations to you guys. You were part of the grassroots that made this happen. It was just an amazing thing to watch, and so grateful and glad that it passed. Social Security can make an interesting segue here. Oh, there she is. I don't know why I have host privileges, but so in a second, I want to talk about Social Security as it affects our ESP members also. But Lisa, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning, everyone. So Joe sent me a message and asked me to jump on and talk about the repeal of GPO-WEP, the government pension offset, the windfall elimination provision. And we have worked, GAE has worked very, very hard on this over the years. But I was honored to be in Washington, D.C. Sunday afternoon at around 4:45 when President Biden signed H.R. 82 to repeal the GPO and the WEP. What our members who are impacted need to know is obviously we've done the hard part, and it was a hard, long road. I know. We've been working on this. I can remember one of my first meetings as a member, hearing about this issue and how important it was. So the implementation obviously it's not going to be overnight. They're not going to be able to turn that switch on overnight. But what we do know is if you are impacted, you will receive a lump sum payment of the penalty amount that you did not receive in 2024. So it is retroactive to January 1st, 2024. So you will receive a lump sum of those amounts, and then you will see your monthly benefit increase to where it should be. The thing that they told us, the only thing they could give us right now to tell members is to, number one, make sure that the Social Security Administration has your correct mailing address. And if you receive direct deposit, that they have your correct banking information. So I'm telling everybody, if you've received something in the mail from the Social Security Administration in the last 6 months, year, then you know they have your correct mailing address. And if you're receiving your benefits by direct deposit, they have that correct information. They have been working on the implementation plan, and NEA is working with them directly to get the information. And as soon as they get it to us as state presidents, I will get it out to you. And I want to thank Tony and the retired, because you guys brought this to GAE in 2022. I think it's when we did the new business item. And I will tell you, part of the push that you guys taught us as state presidents something, because I worked with the other state presidents to ensure that, number one, our new business item was going to pass. And then those of us in the impacted states who were state presidents, we saw what happened in that process. So we have been working together ever since to continue to move this forward. And I think that was one of the differences at NEA this time, is it didn't happen and then it got forgotten about at NEA. Oh, we're always doing that. No, it was kept on the front burner, and that we were, as state presidents, pushing and asking every single time we met. And I think that made a lot of difference. And I'm so proud because you guys jump-started that for us. So we will have that information out to all our members as soon as we get it. And our members will receive their lump sum payment for 2024, and then their benefits moving forward will be recalculated. So,
Lisa, I was just thinking, it was a year ago that we were having a hard time getting John Ossoff to sign
right.
onto the legislation. And just because of your work and the work of
Yep.
our GAE retired members and others, he became an enthusiastic supporter of it. And just to show you how strange bedfellows can be, Hank Johnson, who was sponsored the bill in the House, voted against it. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, who wouldn't even meet with us, ended up voting for it. So you never know who may be there to help you out.
Joe, my story in this is, we were watching, and I watched a whole lot of the Senate and learned I don't know how the U.S. Senate works during this, because it's a lot different than how the Georgia legislature works. I kept texting our lobbyist at NEA saying, help me out here. What are they really voting on? But it was quite interesting because Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana spoke against the bill, voted against the bill on several times. But then when it came up for final passage, he voted for the bill. And I've seen him going all around talking about how this is a wonderful thing they did. So it was the final vote in the Senate was 76-30. So there was very, very broad support for this. And so if anyone, next time we have a big federal issue, like we do Lobby and Learn here to help our members understand how the Georgia legislature works, we need some training about how Congress works and how a bill, you see a vote and well, no, that's just a vote to say we're going to keep considering it. That's not, they're not passing it yet. And that happens several times. So, but I'm very excited and very glad for so many of our members that have reached out that this is going to be life-changing for them. So thank you all.
Thank you, Lisa. You're welcome to stick around. I'm going to use this issue to segue into our efforts with the public school employees retirement system.
Right.
I hope most of you know, certainly if you've been on any calls like this in the past year, dealing with legislation and what GAE is doing. Our school bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, our school custodians, maintenance personnel, they're not a part of Debbie's TRS. They have their own state pension plan. It's called the Public School Employees Retirement System. And it is, I always struggle to find a word to describe it. It is inadequate is an understatement. It's shameful. The average monthly benefit is calculated on a mathematical equation of years of service up until July 1st of this year, or of last year, $16.50 times years of service. The average monthly benefit was $290. And these are employees who, one, don't make a lot of money in the first place. They may be treated part-time, but most of the ones I know are up before the sun rises, home after the sun sets, maybe have a couple hours in between, certainly not enough time for a second job that would pay retirement benefits. So we talked about this on the GAER Lobby and Learn the other day. It's a great example where we took this issue and had our members present the realities to legislators, and they became convinced. And so we had a situation where 1650 was codified in law. That was the maximum that formula could be determined benefits for ESPs and the PSERS. It could not go higher without changing the law. Last year, we were able to change the law. We got that cap out of the law. It can grow to $200 times years of service. I hope to see that happen. I'd settle for $25 sometime in the next several years. But we got rid of that obstacle and that blockade in the state law that said it couldn't go higher, and got a minimum set of $17. So it's 50-cent increase in the formula this year, and that's not much. So we have to go back and every year get an appropriation to keep trying to grow and grow and grow that up. But it was a huge thing to get that cap out of the state law. The reason I bring this up in the context of Social Security is that what we're finding out is many of these ESPs are working in school districts that are not participating in Social Security for their benefit, even though we believe law requires them to do so. So even if the school system opted out of Social Security in favor of TRS for their classroom teachers, they still have to pay Social Security for their ESPs unless they have a comparable plan, and PSERS is not a comparable plan. So the State Employees Retirement System, which runs the PSERS, did a kind of an informal survey of school systems and found at least 24 school districts are not paying Social Security for their ESP members. Senator Larry Walker, who introduced the legislation not only to eliminate the cap, has also got legislation last year, would have to be reintroduced this year, that would require those school systems to pay into Social Security for these ESP members. We think they're already required to, but he has also enlisted the State Department of Audits for a more accurate survey of what actually is going on out there. So, several school districts didn't respond. Several gave answers that didn't seem right. So that's the nexus to Social Security here, there. But the PSERS and increasing retirement benefits for our school bus drivers, cafeteria workers, custodians is continues to be a high priority for us. this year as we try to get additional funds to increase those benefits. Debbie, you did such a fine job on the potential of TRS legislation. Would you want to address that again right now?
Just to remind everybody, as you have said, we are in the first year of a 2-year session. If legislation is going to be introduced that will directly impact the finances of the TRS, it has to be introduced during this session. The fortunate thing that we have here in the state of Georgia, that I only know of one other state that has this, is when this legislation, if it is introduced, must then go to an actuarial study in the interim, so that they can't dupe the legislators by saying, oh, this won't cost TRS very much at all. They actually have to go through an actuarial study that is done by Kavanaugh McDonald, which is an independent actuarial organization, who will then give the legislators an accurate picture of what those finances may be. So we do have some breathing room in between the 2 sessions, this January and next January, should something be introduced. With that said, that does not prevent them, being our detractors, from presenting some non-fiscal bill, which could in some ways change, undermine, confuse, make it unhealthy decisions. That was Chairman Carter's presentation at the end of last legislative session. And so we were still going to be on the lookout for any potential, quote, non-fiscal bills. As of yet, we don't know of any, but then under the new rules that people don't have to pre-qualify or, before the session starts, present bills. We don't know of anything at this point in time. And Dr. Evans has all of his contacts out asking questions at this point in time. But right now we know of nothing. We will be in constant contact if we do. As I indicated the other day, Dr. Evans has the highest regard for both our lobbyist, Joe Fleming, and Lisa Morgan, and how she presents at the legislature. So he will definitely be looking forward to working with our 2 leaders should TRS need to provide information or request assistance.
In that batch of possible non-fiscal impact bills would be things that might limit TRS's ability to make certain investments.
Right, and we've dealt with that. We obviously, with our rate of investment return last fiscal year being 14.5%, the legislature didn't make any laws that prohibited us from making good financial decisions. But yes, they have in some ways limited us. Going to mention the phrase ESG. It's very much a Republican agenda to limit any investments in environmental, social, governmental, issues. But it wasn't, well, we were able to have compromise language that thus far has not been a negative impact for us. And I got to thank Governor Miller and his staff for holding the line, because there was other legislation that was being worded that would have made it very difficult for us. They were, just to give an example, if a money manager had a policy in favor of looking at environmental issues, it would have precluded TRS from investing or working with that particular money manager. that's what we were able to get the specificity removed and satisfy some of the concerns as to how we were going to deal with this investment policy. But we'll still watch for it. It came out of ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council, which is a national Republican that will give boilerplate legislation suggestions to states from a national perspective. So we just have to continue to watch and see what else they may be emboldened by, giving the new administration on the national level. But
Debbie, I'm sorry.
I'm done.
Real quickly, you mentioned Saturday that y'all ranked #1. I think that's kind of great news to share.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. We have been known for years to be in the top 10 to 15 on our returns. However, last fiscal year, we were #1 in the nation for earning 14.5% investment on our money. That's astounding. It is truly, well, I mean, astounding, not because of it's just the number, but it's accolades to our policies that the board has adopted. It's accolades to our 54 Department of Investment Services staff who work day and night. And Joe, they will be amongst, there's a group of 5 of them that if the weather is inclement, they never leave the building. They are there for the duration. Just trust me, somebody's in the building watching those investments 24/7, regardless of the weather.
That's great news. So between the ESP retirement system and the teacher retirement system, 2 huge priorities for us. And we're always there because we need to defend TRS. We have the only state pension plan I know of that has twice a year COLAs, maybe unusual across the country. And it's a well-managed plan. So those will continue to be priorities. Let me just mention a couple other things on other areas of legislation. We're a little handicapped this year in kind of reading the tea leaves. For the first time I can remember, and I've been doing this for over 20 years, they're not pre-filing legislation this year, which is some kind of, pre-file doesn't really give a bill any particular special status, but it does kind of let you know what's going on out there, what people are thinking about in terms of ideas. So we won't get our first glimpse at pieces of legislation new for this session until Monday or Tuesday at the earliest. So it's hard to gauge without that being there. But a couple of things that we're working on. You've heard us talk a lot about waivers. School district waivers allow school systems to basically decide to ignore certain parts of the state law that governs public education. For example, in law and in regulation, Department of Education regulation are set class size maximums. You can have no more than 33 students in an English class, for example. But school districts, and almost 99% of them, have waivers from class size laws, meaning all they do is basically tell the State Board of Education, we're not going to follow the state class size maximums. We think we have a better way of doing it. And of course, who does that hurt? That hurts our kids the most. But they have waivers also from the state teacher's salary schedule. So even though we have a state salary schedule that determines how much pay there is in each grade based on education and subject matter, years of experience, they don't have to follow that either. So these waivers are very dangerous things, and they're all throughout the school system. Waivers for nepotism, all sorts of things. But that's going to be a priority this year. We may simplify it a little bit, our bill this year. But Mike McGonigal drafted a piece of legislation for us a couple of years ago. We're going to go basically with that. Vouchers. There is, you may have seen in the newspaper some discussion about the rules that are being put in place for the private school voucher program that passed last year, as I said, by one vote. They are interpreting the law in a way that very few others are, in saying that if there's one school on the list of the lowest performing 25%, all students in that school district are eligible for a voucher. It's a massive expansion of the program. Speaker Jan Jones, who is a huge proponent of vouchers, says that's not what she thinks it does. Chris Irwin, the chairman of the education committee, says the same. But Greg Dozal, the cheerleader for vouchers in the Senate, apparently has been working behind the scenes to get rules written so that it can be interpreted in the most expansive way possible. We've already seen in Arizona where private school vouchers are basically bankrupting the state there, and rife with fraud and abuse. And we're heading in that direction if they allow this interpretation of these rules to carry on like this. Both Jones and Irwin, both legislators of considerable weight in the House, have both spoken pretty forcefully against this. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But the voucher folks have never gone into a legislative session in Georgia without an agenda. And their agenda this year is unknown. They may try to expand what they passed last year. I think that would be silly or stupid on their part. I don't think it would pass. They may go back to the original special needs voucher and try to expand that as well. So we got to keep an eye out on vouchers again. Another initiative that we worked on last year, made some progress on, going to continue to work on this year, is providing some form of compensation for student teachers. They're enrolled full-time. They're basically teaching full-time. Some of them have another job to make ends meet. Many other states offer some sort of compensation or stipend. We actually, in researching this, I found out that school systems are supposed to be given money by the State Department of Education to pay for the mentees, the student teachers overseeing teacher. I don't even think that's happening. So we got a couple things to work on there. Make sure the Department of Education is getting the funding they need to pay for the supervising teacher, and then to begin to create some sort of financial compensation for these student teachers. It's another way to address also the teacher shortage in Georgia. And having talked to some of these students, and Skylar Nunnally leads our Aspiring Educators program, these are really bright kids that we do not want to leave the profession. We want them to stay in it. And they've already professed through their actions their commitment to public education. School safety is going to be an issue this year. You know, we've had a couple of school shootings in Georgia recently. And this could take the form of many things. Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones had a proposal last year that he would give teachers a $10,000 pay raise if they brought their personal firearms to class. Remarkably stupid idea. I can't even imagine the liability that a teacher might face if a student stole the weapon or accidentally discharged. But you may see other things like more high-tech panic alarm type systems, efforts to better coordinate first responder response with school officials. There are a bunch of ideas on the table. There may be additional funding also for school resource officers and others. We're beginning to see already, and it's in the Atlanta paper today if you read it, a lot of the social conservative bills that Republicans in the Senate have had in the last few years appear to be coming back. Some of you may remember a bill that would allow volunteer school chaplains to take the place of school counselors with presumably no training required whatsoever. That's a bill that we fought and did not pass last year. There's lots of talk about transgender athletes and whether they can participate in the sports activities of the teams whose gender they identify with. That's going to be an issue. They've had 5 study committee meetings on it. They'll have legislation ready for this session. So expect another fight over that. And the last thing I want to mention, and then really just, give you time to put your plates away and ask any questions. Another priority of ours is going to continue to be to provide funding for school districts that have a large number of students who live in poverty. Almost all other states, I think there's only 4, which includes Georgia, don't provide school districts with some additional funding or something like a QBE weight for educating a large number of students who live in poverty. That's been talked about. Some Republicans are even advocating the idea. That's one thing we'll be advocating again for this year. But as far as, crystal balling some of the bad things that may happen, they like to keep us in the dark until the last minute possible. So we'll have more reports. We do a report every day they're in session. You should get that. If for some reason you don't receive it, let us know. And we'll see if there's a problem with the opt-out or we've got the wrong email address or something like that. But they're pretty comprehensive reports, and they're designed to get you aware of what's going on and engaged in what's going on, because truly we see it every session. Your phone calls, your emails, your participation in the day of the Capitol, your sometimes testimony and committee hearings, it makes a world of difference. So I'm grateful for GAE retired. You guys are the masters of grassroots lobbying and do a great job at it. And like I said, I'm happy to take any questions or turn it back over to Karen or Tony or Patrick.
Do we have any questions for Joe? And mine is, why don't you have the magic ball that tells us, yeah.
I used
Go ahead.
I used to be allowed in some of the Republican meetings, but not so much, not so much now. There are going to be a lot of big issues this session. There's a lot of talk. The prison system in Georgia needs a lot of attention, and there's been a lot to deal with that. That's going to be a big issue. The governor is leading an effort at tort reform to try to rein in things like malpractice costs and whatnot. There's going to be some other issues. Maybe we hope that it's a lighter year for education and we don't have these blowtorch.
Joe, I have a question.
Yeah.
I know that we have states that are being bankrupted because of charter and vouchers and all. Is there any way we can use that information to help us defeat these kind of bad bills within the Georgia legislature?
Yeah, we did. And I think it's part of the reason we had so much success 2 years ago in beating the bill and still got 6 Republicans this year to vote with us, is that there are very, very few transparencies and very little accountability in the voucher bill that passed Georgia. We have the situation that Arizona has where the benefiting parents get to determine for themselves what is a legitimate educational expense. And in Arizona, that included round trip plane tickets to Paris to visit museums, horseback riding lessons, just all sorts of things that we would not normally associate as education opportunities, or at least that the taxpayer should pay for.
Follow up.
Yeah.
Is there some information we can get to our members so we can help do what we did with GPO WEP, is get our members to call our state senators and representatives and talk about how dangerous it is, and that we actually educate our members too.
On vouchers specifically?
Well, vouchers, charters, whatever, even though we're a charter system.
I like to think we've done that. We can certainly do that again. Give me a couple of days to see what we're hearing at the Capitol. But yeah, we certainly have that information and can disseminate that. And I've spent a ton of time writing about vouchers, so there's a reservoir of stuff there. But yes, we can do that.
Thank you, Joe.
Joe, I have a question.
Cyril, Tony had her hand up, so I'm going to let her.
Okay.
Yeah, Joe, is it on anyone's radar what's happening with educating children who are in detention? Who are in detention? Children who are being, who are in the juvenile justice system, who are in detention. Is there anyone paying attention to what's happening to how those children are educated, how they're transitioned out, if they are transitioned out, how they're reintegrated into the school system. Has anyone paid attention to that?
That's something I'd love to learn more about, Tony, because I mean, I feel like that is probably a neglected area. The only thing I ever hear about that is whether disciplinary cases affect the CCRPI scores, and
Right.
whether that should be part of the scores. There's a bill a few years ago to, you know, but as far as the kids themselves,
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned
I
about.
can't recall anything. Surely there's a group looking out for those people, but I would love to know more about it. Let's plan on talking.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah.
And Cyril, your question is?
Okay, my question is, good morning, everybody. My question is, with all of the threats of them talking about reforming the Department of Education, has there been any indication as to how testing will be impacted here in Georgia?
Specifically literacy, for example?
Yes, because we know that they just came up with these 10 components that teachers had to be required to do here in Georgia.
Yeah, so that's kind of evolving. The State Board of Education recently included another testing vendor. I think testing begins this fall of 2025 coming up. So there's still rule development to be done there. Let me check on the latest status of that. There is a board meeting on January 14th, 15th. I think an agenda is out and it may be on the agenda there. But that's a really good question, Cyril, and I'll get more details on that too.
Thank you, Joe.
We need to send out something to let everybody know.
Joe, before I go through some upcoming GAE retired stuff, you want to talk about just the legislative contact team coming up on January 22nd?
I can. Lisa's kind of primarily coordinating that. I'll take your word for on the date. I don't have it memorized. I think it's on my calendar though. Let's see.
I have January 22nd at 6:30.
Yeah, so it looks like, so just to let you know, we've been doing Facebook Live calls basically every other week during the session, which are open on Facebook to anybody who wants to see them. We're going to turn those into legislative contact team meetings basically every 2 weeks, probably every Wednesday at that time, which is 6 or 6:30, where we'll give you an update on what's going on, answer any questions. But the legislative contact team in itself is essentially a GAE member who is willing to contact their legislator. What we're trying to do is foster a direct relationship between educators, retired educators, and their legislator, so that if a bill comes up on charter schools, Patrick, the legislators will hear from Lisa and me, but we also want them to pick up the phone and call you because you're a constituent of theirs. You have the power to vote for them, and you're a knowledgeable resource. So the whole point of the program is get an informed group of GAE members who start to build a relationship with their legislator. Initially, it may be an introduction. Hi, I'm Joe Fleming. I'm an educator in your district. I work at this school. Be happy to help with any issues. I mean, we ask our legislators to be experts on workers' compensation, taxation, bridge building, schools, everything, and they are not all that. So we're trying to foster a constituent educator legislator relationship. So that call will be on, as Karen said, the 22nd, a Wednesday at 6:30. We'll be sending out a registration on that soon.
Thank you, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have time for maybe one last overriding question. Otherwise, excuse me, I want to stop coughing, but I do want to just share some information about upcoming things. And so I'm going to start that. And then if anybody wants to go through and ask after I finish. Okay. Hopefully not responding. Okay. If you are not getting information from GAE somehow, and there are many ways for this to have happened, you may have been opted out. And so you just need to, it's a very simple URL, gae.org/update, and put your updated information in here, especially if you have moved, kind of. But if you're going through and you're saying, well, I don't know what's going on, and people, you're not getting information, then please go through and update it. I do want to share just a couple of non-legislative things first. Our next speaker, we tend to have the lunch bunch on the first Wednesdays of each month. And we're going to talk about the 10 commandments of wealth management next month, because we're getting all this Social Security money finally. We're going to have like something to manage, maybe. So please go through and put that on your calendar. And then let me just scroll up really quickly. If you are a retired member and you're not getting in the loop, you need to go through and fill that information sheet out. And we are having our business meeting via Zoom this Friday. Any retired member is eligible to join us for this meeting.
I put the link in the chat, Karen.
You are good, Tony. And then there's also a GAE, as far as I know, weather permitting, board meeting happening, and that information should be going out about how to attend those board meetings. District meetings, again, you can find out what district you're in if you're a retired member. You are welcome to attend any of these member-driven meetings that are happening. And I'm wearing my hat as chair of the PD committee, Professional Development Committee. If you're retired, this really does not apply to you, but we've revamped the GAE Foundation grant and scholarship forms, and we're going to take a couple of different days in January and February to talk about that. And so if you still are in an educational situation, please tune in, because free money is just really good. Joe and Debbie talked about the TRS system. We have a great retiree, Lisa Underwood, who goes through and attends these meetings along with other retired members. And again, via Zoom. The pandemic has changed how we do business. But if you haven't read one of Lisa Underwood's reports, please do so. And while active members are in the trenches, every other month on a Wednesday at 10:30 in the morning, GAE retired members are able to attend. Please share the following with members and non-members. We have a couple more pre-retirement seminars coming up. The last one, or the penultimate one, is the last Saturday in January. And these are open to members and non-members. Again, they're virtual. We're going to have to update the flyer. I guess we'll talk a little bit about the GPO web and celebrate its success, but we're not going to have to educate people about repealing it. It's a good place to be. But again, please share this flyer widely. If you are a retired member, we have a deadline to nominate people and self-nominations are wonderful, to the NEA Representative Assembly to be held in Portland, Oregon. And then we will have the GAE Representative Assembly in Marietta in April. So please, again, fill these forms out and send them in if you're interested in being nominated. GAE Retired will have its virtual day at the Capitol the first Tuesday in February. So again, if you're going through and going, well, I don't really understand what to lobby about, and this is again, I need to hear information 23 times or so before it actually sinks in. So I hope you'll go through and attend the GAE retired virtual day at the Capitol. So that's all I have at this point in time. Does anybody else want to add any information for the good of the cause? Tony, thank you for having my back on those virtual links. I appreciate that.
Karen,
Yes, Brenda.
yes. What is Peggy's last name?
Who?
Peggy, the lady that spoke last.
Peggy Cochran.
Okay, all right, thanks.
You are welcome. She was our featured speaker at our last GAE retired lunch bunch and former GAE interim executive director. If you have any suggestions for the lunch bunch, I'll go through and put my contact information in the chat, and please go through and reach out to me. We do quite a variety of topics throughout the year, and I really would appreciate your suggestions. And anything else for Joe, Debbie, Patrick, Tony, anybody else who would like to say anything? Well, thank you so much, Joe, for being with us. Debbie, thank you for
Pleasure.
time. We are so fortunate to have both of these individuals and to have Debbie as a GAE retired member and former GAE president going through leading the TRS Board of Trustees. I just feel like we have a direct pipeline to get our questions answered, and that's a good thing. And Joe is very much the communicator also, Joe. So I appreciate both of you. I appreciate all of you being GAE and GAE retired members. And hopefully we will withstand the snow coming in here to our state over the weekend. And I'm looking forward in Athens, Georgia, for temperatures to be in the 50s at least. This 40s is killing me, but we will winter this, as they say, and hopefully we will return next month and learn about wealth management. So thank you so much for being here today, everyone. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Great job, Karen and Tony.
Thanks, Patrick.